this is Paul Mackey, and you're listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts On podcast. Well, it's been a little while, etc., usual. The big news around here is that the new owner of the building where the shop is located wants to terminate the lease early, in a month or two, and take the space for his own. I actually think the offer sounds solid, but the new space will not have a surplus area for this recording setup. So likely the new location will be my semi-dank basement at home, which I hope to spruce up a bit and make it feel good for recording in. The big plus is that it'll be in the house, so anytime I get a whim to work on the podcast, all I need to do is go downstairs. And in the meantime, of course, I will need to take it all down, put a lot of it into boxes, and move it, setting it up in the basement room once I have that cleaned out and ready to go. So I don't know if there will be another regular episode ahead of Dog Days of Advent. I have 12 episodes in mind for Dog Days of Advent, all trivia once more, but I promise less difficult and mostly not as esoteric as last year. But since there's a decent chance the recording setup will be in pieces for all or part of Advent season, I'll be pre-recording it and editing all of it, which should take some time. All that logistics is for a little further on, so today let's just get into The Rockford Files, Season 2, Episode 6, The Great Blue Lake Land and Development Company, originally aired October 17th, 1975. That day of note, in the NASA Space Shuttle development process, this was the first date of shuttle main engine testing, conducted in Mississippi at what is now known as the John C. Stennis Space Center. NASA has been conducting rocket engine tests at this site since it was first created for testing engines for the Apollo program in 1961. Meanwhile, at the box office, number 5, in second release, Russ Meyer's Super Vixens, starring among others Charles Napier. Number 4 was also in second release, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Number 3 was Jaws, continuing the way down from a summer at number 1. Number 2 was down from number 1 last time, The Master Gunfighter, soon to never be seen in theaters again, and the number 1 film in its first week of release was Hard Times with Charles Bronson and James Coburn, a Depression-era film about bare-knuckle boxing. In the UK, the official charts company listed the top 5 singles for the week as number 5, It's Time for Love by the Shylights, number 4, Feelings by Morris Albert, number 3, There Goes My First Love by the Drifters, number 2, I Only Have Eyes for You by Art Garfunkel, and the number 1 single was Hold Me Close by David Essex. On the Billboard Hot 100, the top 5 were number 5, Ballroom Blitz by Sweet, number 4, Lion Eyes by the Eagles, number 3, Miracles by Jefferson Starship, number 2, Calypso/I'm Sorry by John Denver, and the number 1 record in the U.S. that week was Bad Blood by Neil Sedaka. Brief summary of the episode. Jim has the misfortune of having car trouble in the middle of a massive real estate con. He's carrying bail money in cash, and one of the fraudulent sales staff, who is already working on skipping town, makes the motions of putting Rockford's $10,000 in the real estate company's safe before getting out of town. Jim ends up framed for the salesman's murder and locked up in the town jail. Rockford is forced to take advantage of a well-meaning sheriff, but ends up exposing the entire real estate fraud, and he also solves the murder by the head of the company and aids in his capture.
This is Jim Rockford. At the tone, leave your name and message. I'll get back to you.
Hello, Jim Rockford's machine. This is Larry Doheny machine. Will you please have your master call my master at his convenience? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Who is? This episode was full of character actors that I recognized a bit. Richard Shull, Noble Willingham, Dennis Patrick, all names and faces that seemed damn familiar, but when I looked at their IMDb listings, nothing stood out as, oh yes, that's exactly where I remember them from. Which I gather is actually somewhat the goal for many character actors. Meanwhile, we have Dana Alcar. I didn't faithfully watch MacGyver week in, week out, but by name and appearance there was no question that was where I knew him from. Ibsen Dana Alcar was born in Ferndale, Michigan, October 10th, 1927. He served a tour of duty with the U.S. Navy near the end of World War II and moved to New York City in the 50s to pursue a life in the theater. He studied under Meisner and worked film, television, and theater jobs throughout his career. In cinema, Dana Elcar appeared in Failsafe in 1964, his first film credit, and also appeared in The Learning Tree, The Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid, The Sting, and in 1980, he took the late Edward Platt's role as the chief in the Get Smart movie, The Nude Bomb. He also appeared in the Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin film All of Me, and 2010 in 1984, before moving on to his major television roles. On TV, he appeared in many dramas and comedies as a character actor in one-off roles like this sheriff in Rockford Files. He appeared on Columbo, Cannon, Benson, Newhart, The Fall Guy, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Hill Street Blues, The A-Team, Trapper John M.D., and Matlock. In 1985, he featured as a smaller character in the MacGyver pilot before it went to series, when he was promoted to the role of Pete Thornton, MacGyver's supervisor, and he appeared in most episodes. On MacGyver, interestingly, his body double for stand-ins and some stunts was Don S. Davis, who I know best as Major Garland Briggs on Twin Peaks. In 1991, Dana began losing his vision due to glaucoma, and they incorporated this into Pete Thornton's storyline on the show. He also portrayed blind characters on Law & Order, The Magic School Bus, and ER. He took the role of Vladimir in a stage production of Waiting for Godot using a white cane on stage. Dana Elcar was active in the theater all his life. In 1986, he formed the Santa Paula Theater Center with fellow actor William Lucking and served as artistic director for 6 years. The center remains in active production to this day. Dana Elcar passed away a few years after his final role on ER in 2005. Totally 70s. The $1,000 bill was last minted in 1934. To this day, of course, it is legal tender, but any that turn up at a bank are surrendered to the Treasury for destruction. The primary purpose of the bill was to make transactions between banks easier. Obviously, electronic transfer of funds became easier and easier, and the use of large bills for crime was a known risk, so the Treasury discontinued all notes larger than $100 in 1969. As they were already rare in public use in 1969, they were likely mostly out of circulation by 1975, and I'd imagine almost entirely by now. If you should happen to come across one, here's an important detail. If it has a green Treasury seal, it's worth $1,000. If it has a gold seal, it's valued by collectors, but I don't know how much above face value you could get. Artifactoids. The shooting location where Jim meets up with Rocky and Harry is listed on IMDb as the Denny's Restaurant at 16401 Delone Street, Canyon Country, California, USA. As far as I can tell on Google Earth, which lists that address as part of Santa Clarita, it is still standing as of September this year and still a Denny's. The mobile station next door is still there, and still a mobile station. You can see the sign in the background of the scene. Earlier on, with La Paz Liquors on Magnolia, which was used in both Rockford Files and Whiz Kids, I suspected the liquor store was a former Denny's, but this building obviously was and is a Denny's, so let's look at Denny's restaurants. First, the building. Original Denny's franchises feature a boomerang roof that is described in some places as Googie-inspired, but it is a rather modest version of Googie. I have talked about Googie architecture in the past when I spotted an actual Googie's restaurant in Season 1, Episode 13, Profit and Loss Part 2, Episode 24 of this podcast. I looked at roadsidearchitecture.com for images of the various buildings, and I was sidetracked a bit looking around. I can tell I'll be back to this site in the future. In any case, the boomerang design is iconic, and you can spot former Denny's locations by their boomerang roof structure. The second design had a zigzag roof that I'd argue is more Googie than the boomerang, and there was a false upper level of the roof that conceals HVAC and kitchen hood outlets and the like. The third version is what we have in this episode, and still to this day, with two sloping roof sides and a prominence in the middle that does work similar to the false top of the second kind. It looks like this design was used starting in or near 1970. Even though you can't see the full side profile in the episode, I'm confident this is the exact same building. So Denny started in Lakewood, California in 1954 as Danny's Donuts and grew to 6 locations in the LA area. With Store 8, they changed from a donut shop to a full coffee shop with 24 operation, and in 1959 decided to change to Denny's instead of Danny's due to a competing coffee chain Coffee Dan's. By 1981, they reached 1,000 stores. The company has about 1,600 locations today and have been publicly traded, though a private investment firm is in the process of an acquisition that will take the company private. So what worked in this episode? It felt like an old-fashioned story even 50 years ago. You imagine the same story set 40 or 50 years before when the town has no bank and maybe only one phone, too. There's also one very minor detail that I appreciated, and I'm not even positive it would have been detectable on a lot of the televisions people were watching on at the time. Rockford continually looks like he's got a faint sheen of sweat on his skin, and that has to be intentional. The real estate people look dry. Jim is nervous, desperate, and in a desert, and he looks just that bit more desperate with visible sweat. What didn't work? I didn't really wind up believing the scam could work in the real world, but perhaps it was different in the 70s, when information given out by selling agents wasn't easily fact-checked. The fact that they could take someone out in the middle of the desert and say, "The lake hasn't been put in yet," boggles the mind. Now, that swampland I bought in Florida, on the other hand. So next time is The Rockford Files Season 2, Episode 6, The Real Easy Red Dog. But next up on this podcast episode is Whiz Kids, Episode 18, May I Take Your Order, Please? After a couple of vintage commercial spots.
Russ Meyer, the rural Fellini, serves up a colossal motion picture geared for the young and old alike, the sophisticate and the blue collar. A cinematic smorgasbord of mind-boggling beauty. 6 of the most bountiful women in the world, served up from the lusty table of Russ Meyer. Feast on it. Rated X.
How do I know I like it?
Trust me, I found you turtle, didn't I?
But I've never been here before.
Yeah, but I have.
We'll make your day at Puffin Taco. Just wait and see. Oh, how good Puffin Taco can be. You're gonna love the way we make the things you like to eat. So come on into Puffin Taco and give your tummy a treat.
Can we come back tomorrow?
Puffin Taco.
So those preceding promos were first Russ Meyer's Super Vixen, which for me raises some questions. Did they really advertise X-rated Super Vixens on television? Anyhow, as I said during the Rockford section, it was one of the top movies of that week at the box office, starring Charles Napier as the male lead. Second was an ad for Southern California, New Mexico, and Colorado chain Puffin Taco, for no apparent reason. So let's look at Whiz Kids Episode 18, May I Take Your Order, Please, originally aired June 2nd, 1984. That day of note. According to my source, later that night, NBC aired the pilot and only produced episode of Welcome to the Fun Zone, a musical comedy variety show meant to air late nights. Some sources list it as a failed Saturday Night Live replacement. It featured Weird Al, John Candy, and Howie Mandel, with the Doctor himself, Dr. Demento, as MC. So this final time, I'm going to look at the Billboard chart of computer entertainment software for the week ending June 2nd, 1984. Number 5 was Exodus Ultima 3. Number 4 was Beachhead, a World War II battlefield simulator set in the Pacific Theater. Number 3 was Lode Runner. Number 2 was Julius Erving and Larry Bird Go One-on-One. And the number 1 entertainment software computer game was Flight Simulator 2. At the box office, this is the chart for the week ending May 31st, 1984, as the weeks run Friday through Thursday, and this episode aired the following Saturday. I had just turned 11 at this point. Number 5 was Police Academy, which I saw later on VHS. Number 4 was Romancing the Stone, which I definitely saw at the Roseville 4 near my house. Number 3 was Breakin', which I don't think I ever saw. Number 2 was The Natural, which my parents rented at some point, and the number 1 film was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which I saw repeatedly on VHS over the next few years. For the UK, I don't have access to a copy of the NME, so it's back to Music Week. I spotted a tiny article, a paragraph really, announcing that Stiff Records had signed an up-and-coming band, The Pogues, who had agreed as part of the deal to assume that name and retire their original name, Pogue Mahone. The old name excluded them from a lot of radio airplay, as in Gaelic it means kiss my ass. I was delighted and amused to have spotted this, as I am a huge fan of both the Pogues and member Shane MacGowan, rest in peace. As for the UK singles chart for the week ending June 1st, 1984, number 5 was Groovin', You're the Best Thing, Big Boss Groove by the Style Council. Number 4, Automatic by the Pointer Sisters. Number 3, The Reflex by Duran Duran. Number 2, Let's Hear It for the Boy off the Footloose soundtrack by Denise Williams. And the number 1 single in the UK was Wake Me Up Before You Go Go by Wham, in the first of its 2 weeks at number 1. On the Billboard Hot 100, number 5 was The Reflex by Duran Duran. Number 4, Oh Sherry by Steve Perry. Number 3, Hello by Lionel Richie. Number 2, Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper. And number 1 was Let's Hear It for the Boy by Denise Williams from the Footloose soundtrack. A brief summary of this episode: Alice is working at the Burger Barn when she overhears men plotting to kill a man while at the drive-thru. She can't find anyone to believe her story until finally an aspiring co-worker of Farley's uses her story in a comical article for the Gazette. Via this story, the criminals know a girl named Alice knows what they're up to, and when she finds their distinctive new car, they are watching for her and hold her hostage. The crooks are plotting a heist with a computer expert they plan to kill after he gives them the program to defeat security surrounding a priceless crown on display in a museum. As their plans continue to fall apart under pressure from Farley and the kids who are trying to find and rescue Alice, they resort to forcing Richie to complete the program. Richie cleverly builds in an alarm delay into his security hack that allows Alice and Richie an opening to make their escape, while the crooks are trapped by security gates until Quinn can come to arrest them. My favorite line:
Then the blood beast appears, dripping heavy slime. I want to see slime like I've never seen slime before. I want to drive the audience out of the theater on their knees, screaming and groaning and begging for mercy.
I loved that the show depicted an over-the-top director of a terrible film no one would ever see because his producers were crooks using the production as a cover. Alright, last time the Who Is query. Charles Napier plays Douglas Blackthorne in this episode, which made it interesting that he was in one of the top movies in October 1975, referenced before in the Rockford Files episode, and the trailer I played between the two episodes today. Charles Napier was born in Kentucky in 1936. He enlisted in the Army in 1954 and made sergeant by the end of his service in 1958. He attended Western Kentucky University and graduated with a degree in art. In grad school, also at WKU, his instructor told him to give acting a try in 1964. His early acting work included 4 films for director Russ Meyer. He moved around the country doing various work and then returned to Hollywood, where soon he was working steadily as a character actor on both TV and the big screen. He had memorable roles in The Blues Brothers and Rambo Part 2, and worked in several films for Jonathan Demme, including Something Wild, Married to the Mob, Silence of the Lambs, and Philadelphia, among others. On television, Charles was in 2 episodes of The Rockford Files, the first of which is 4 episodes after today's. He had a serious regular role on The Oregon Trail and one on Outlaws. In 49 episodes of The Incredible Hulk, he performed the Hulk's voice, uncredited as a favor for his friend Bill Bixby. Other TV roles include both Star Trek the Original Series and Deep Space Nine in different roles, Mission Impossible, The Mod Squad, Starsky and Hutch, Chips, Night Court, The A-Team, Black's Magic, Murder, She Wrote, Party of Five, Roswell, Monk, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and his last IMDb credit is on Archer. I skipped a lot of the roles making that list. He has a total of 206 acting credits listed at IMDb. His episode of Archer aired about 7 months before he passed away in October of 2011 of undisclosed causes at the age of 75. That week in tech, there are lots of computers shown along the way, and Richie even drops the Apple brand name, but I believe the recognizable computer was a Radio Shack computer built by Kyocera. My copy of the episode is cut off at the end, but I assume that Tandy or Radio Shack was listed in the Tech Contributors section of this episode. The computer that Richie is toting around is one of the first notebook-sized computers ever produced. It was the TRS-80 Model 100. The Model 100 was originally made and marketed in Japan as the Kyocera Kyotronic 85. It used a Kyocera-produced version of the Intel 8085 processor running at 2.4 MHz with 8K memory expandable to 32. A non-backlit, 8-line, 40-character wide display from Sharp Electronics with drivers by Hitachi was used. When not plugged into a wall outlet, it could operate for 20 hours on a set of 4 AA batteries. It had an internal 300 baud modem, or could be used with an external cassette tape recorder. Eventually, in 1985, it would connect to 3.5-inch floppy drive attachment. If we assume that Richie has the 8K version, that retailed at $1,099, which is around $3,600 in today's dollars. Artifactoids. I tried to get a good look at the signage and structure of the location where they shot the Burger Barn. It all seemed to be kind of a generic-looking fast food restaurant. In the shot looking out the order window where Jeremy is receiving his ice cream cone, there are tantalizing few frames where you can spot maybe 30% of the sign for the business out by the street, but between the fact that they framed the shot intentionally obscuring the sign and the blurry digitized old VHS the file came from, I couldn't make out enough to know for sure. Then, days later, I read a listicle about defunct fast food chains and saw the sign for SoCal-originated Pup and Taco, and I was pretty sure it was the sign I saw in the episode. But the main color on the building depicted was red with a high-peaked roof, so I did a Google search and came up with tons of store images, including a new for 1980 store design, opening ad with a square gray or blue roof, so I am reasonably confident this was a location for Pup and Taco that they dressed up as the Burger Barn. Russell Wendell started the first location in 1956 selling hot dogs, tacos, and pastrami sandwiches. He was already a SoCal success operating a donut store chain known as the Big Donut. All those locations featured a massive donut on the roof. He eventually decided to focus on the Pup and Taco chain, so he sold his Big Donut chain to a man named Brandy, and I'll let you figure out how the rest of that went. The Pup and Taco chain expanded, and he had 60 locations by the 1970s, expanding to Colorado and New Mexico. In the late 70s and early 80s, the chain was apparently frequently the butt of jokes by Johnny Carson. Sometime quite soon after this episode aired, Taco Bell, the Pepsi-Cola-owned conglomerate, saw an opportunity to get the prime locations and bought out almost all of Pup and Taco for $50 million, leaving 3 independent Albuquerque locations, which changed their names to Pop and Taco. So what worked? I liked that it treated Alice like an independent, competent individual who took it upon herself to investigate when nobody else would take her seriously. It showed her taking on the tasks that Richie would ordinarily be shown working on. In the end, I thought the method that Richie cooked up to get away was smart, and I appreciated they could still do a story involving real peril for the main cast characters before the big change to national or global stories. What didn't work? Well, I didn't quite understand how all of the rest of the gang completely disbelieved Alice initially. Also, I understand the writers needed a way to tip off the crooks that Alice was looking into them, but I really didn't think that the article by Brenda would be the sort of thing the editor would have allowed into print, especially considering all the trouble he'd been giving Farley at various times. I went into this series with vague memories of what turned out to be 2 episodes, and I really enjoyed the nostalgic look back at the period, even though the series itself was apparently not so clearly remembered on my part. From my current perspective, I can see the lack of studio and network support as the season went on. I would say the main flaws and shifts in tone were clearly from studio or network tinkering more than anything that I would call self-inflicted on the part of the producers. I understand child actors do not frequently become career performers, at least not with careers that keep them in the public eye. I already pretty much told you what each of the kids went on to do, with Matthew Laborto being the only one who has kept a career in performance going, mainly in voice acting since the early 90s. Andrea Elson, of course, moved on to ALF with 4 years of success. I think Whiz Kids itself deserved better, but in the end, the network looks at the numbers, and if they're poor enough, they need to move on to something else. I want to again thank Chris Cooling, who I corresponded with a few times during my rediscovery of this show. If you are on the YouTube version of the podcast, you can look back as he has given some points of clarification in the comments of earlier videos. Chris, I have dreams of covering other past shows eventually, so I look forward to checking in sometime in the future. I know some of the titles in my eventual plan have been covered at his excellent podcast, Forgotten TV. Some series have sparse information online, and Chris does a great job of researching them. Check out the Forgotten TV podcast if you have a chance. It's definitely worth a listen to if you're into vintage media like I am. So obviously there's no next time on Whiz Kids. I may be pairing something else with Rockford episodes, or perhaps doubling up on Rockford. There are plenty left to go. Sometimes it will be moonlighting when Darcy is available, though the shop definitely takes a lot of time and energy, and this move and setup afterwards will be a factor for a while. I have a general shows plan that clusters various series together, but I may choose to bump something into this vacancy. I'm not sure. Until we move and I figure it all out, I guess it's just happy hunting. You've been listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts On podcast, produced by Paul Mackey in association with Nimlas Studios. Any short clips of audio from shows is included under fair use for commentary purposes, and copyright for that content remains with its original copyright holders. The theme song is Too Good by Jack Mangan and is used by his generous permission. One Idjit's Thoughts is produced under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. You can find more episodes of this podcast and many other fine podcasts at nimlas.org. You can contact me by emailing idjitcastpodcast@gmail.com or commenting on episodes at nimlas.org.
Let's make our own memories.
You know, I gotta say, I would try the taste of chocolate soft serve with taco sauce, and then I'd probably scrape off the taco sauce and eat the rest. I mean, $1.54 in 1983, it's like $5 today.